Okay, I'm Dr. Marianne, founder of Step-by-Step Dyslexia Solutions. Welcome to How to Unlock the Genius Mind of Your Dyslexic Child. Thank you for being with us today. So my background, for those of you who haven't been on the webinar before, I'm the president of Step-by-Step Dyslexia Solutions, and we're a .com. We have some .org people out there. I am a speaker and international teacher trainer, having clients in Africa, and we have people in India, and Marcel is from Africa, and I'm a curriculum developer, an app developer. I have my doctorate in education, leadership, and administration. I have 2 master's degrees and 2 teaching credentials in California that I keep current. And I have 21 years experience in education and 10 years as a classroom teacher. The other 11 years were as an entrepreneur and as a substitute teacher. So my discovery in 2005, I discovered the link between music and reading and how it eases dyslexia. And I realized the power of what I was doing when a grandfather began crying when he saw that his granddaughter made 3 years gain in only 6 weeks. So that was 30 sessions. Daniela broke out of the literacy pattern that her mother could not get out of. And her mother, it was actually in prison. And the grandfather told me, this is a miracle. And then he asked me a question that changed my life forever. Are you a doctor? So 40% of self-made millionaires are dyslexic. 35% of the entrepreneurs in the United States are dyslexic. So for the next 30 minutes, I'm going to share with you how we unlock the genius of the dyslexic mind. So I bring peace to the home of the parent by helping your dyslexic child read so that they can build their self-esteem, unlock their genius mind, and realize their full potential. I want to share a little bit of my personal story so that you know the journey that I've been on to get me where I am today. Teaching is actually my 3rd career. When I was a young girl, my mom wanted me to either be a nun or a teacher because she felt both of those had career stability and financial stability as well. So I didn't want to be either. And when I was in elementary school and middle school, my mom told me that an entrepreneur was an unemployed person. And knowingly, because my dad was very ill, in and out of work with diabetes, and he was an entrepreneur. So his illnesses made her have to go to work. And she worked at General Dynamics, or she worked at Lockheed, and she was taking care of us 7 kids. So when I was college age, I definitely wanted to go to college. I wanted to please my parents, but I had a passion to learn. I was very hungry for knowledge. I started at junior college, and then I went to UC Santa Barbara, and I had an English degree. So here is a beautiful lagoon that I used to jog around every morning when I was in really good shape. So I got my English degree. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. And I had a friend that recommended I go into retail because she was going to be a buyer. And I love to shop, so that sounded like a natural progression. I talked about teaching college and junior college, and I don't know, for some reason, I just went to retail. So I was recruited by Bullocks in their management training program, and I was in the China and Crystal department. And shortly afterwards, I got promoted to the shoe department. But the vision to become a buyer was not happening. And I learned about the politics of the business place. So I left retail and I did some temporary work at Jet Propulsion's laboratory. And I don't know why, it was just something that was available to me when I was out of work, and I loved it. I loved working around men dressed in suits, and they were intellectual, and it just spoke to that part of my heart. And I made a random phone call to General Dynamics, and a bigwig answered the phone. And when he learned about my training and my degree, he had a friend who was a department manager that needed an assistant. So he recruited me to be an administrative assistant at General Dynamics. About 6 months later, I became a technical writer, which I thought was in my career of being a writer, right? An English degree, so far from it. But shortly afterwards, I became a senior writer. So I was with General Dynamics for about 5 years, and then I transferred to ITT Barton, which is where I met my husband of 31 years now. So it wasn't until we got married and had kids that I would volunteer in their preschool. And I was there so much, and the director recommended that I take this teacher test so I could get paid for being there. So why not, right? So I took this teacher test, the CBEST, and I was a substitute at the private school, also at a mental health hospital, which really instilled in me a passion to help kids who were struggling learners. And it was when my kids were in kinder and first grade that I realized how strategically their teachers were trained to teach reading and writing. And I knew if those teachers hadn't been properly trained, they could set those kids on the wrong trajectory. So I didn't learn about dyslexia until I was earning my second master's degree. And a professor recommended I join the International Dyslexia Association. So I think that's kind of interesting. Being a teacher didn't teach me about dyslexia. Being in credential programs didn't. It was this organization, and I recommend it to everybody. I'm now on the board of the Tri-County branch here in California. And so in my own studies, I was wanting to create my own curriculum because I saw kids were all struggling with the same thing. And it was a very low level of phonemic awareness. Even the 8th graders didn't know what the 2nd graders didn't know. So I met a woman, I learned about Sam Orton and Anna Gillingham, but I met a woman who was using music with her reading program. And I tried the music in the left ear, as she recommended, with a 4th grader who immediately went from not being able to read on the computer to reading on the computer, to not connecting words from one column to the next, to being able to connect columns of words. And it was my aha moment. I knew this was what I wanted to do. So I had a summer school program where there was a family, the mother was going to sue the school district because her boy was entering middle school and he was reading at a low 3rd grade level. She asked if he could be in my summer school program, and we said, sure. He had made 3-year gains in only 6 weeks, which is why I know 6 weeks is a magic number that works, which is 30 sessions. And he made 3-year gains in those 6 weeks. And he is successful. He was successful in special ed. He didn't exit special ed, but now he could benefit from all that special ed teacher knew and wanted to teach him. So the school district did not get sued, which was great news, right? So what I became was a supplemental education provider for the state of California. I worked in 5 low-income school districts, and I trained college interns, not credentialed teachers, college interns and substitute teachers to work with this reading program. And it wasn't even as sophisticated as the program I'm using today that I developed. So kids were making 1 to 3 year gains in only 6 weeks. And I collected data for 1 year, not knowing where this was all going. So there was one grandparent who I alluded to earlier. His daughter was making the 3 year gains, and he said, our home used to be a battlefield, and now she gets along with her family, with her peers at school. She's enjoying going to school, and she's doing her homework. And he said, this is a miracle. What are you using? And I said, we're using classical music with phonics, and it works. And he said, well, this is amazing. And he asked me the question, are you a doctor? And so that's when I went to the university. I had already received 2 masters from Azusa Pacific, and I needed to get my doctorate from another university. And that week I was getting mail from Argosy. I spoke to some PhDs who went to Argosy. They highly recommended it. So it took me 7 years to get my doctorate in education, leadership, and administration. So in 2018, so after I got my doctorate, I was actually thinking I was going to be a professor at the university, but a charter school in Los Angeles reached out to me, asked if I would teach middle school. And I prayed and I felt, you know what, I need to check this out. And I went to the middle school and I fell in love with those kids. They were adorable. They were fun. I was still young enough to engage with them, and I just really liked that. So I was at the charter school for about 1.5 years until a long rainy commute to LA made me realize I need to work closer to home. So I found a job closer to home teaching middle school math, and also I co-taught high school math. And it was math, and I knew God was calling me to work with language. So after 2.5 years at that school, I left this public school system in 2018. I actually traveled with an Orton Gillingham organization called Spire, and I trained teachers across the United States in the Orton Gillingham curriculum. I loved it, but then they lost some of their sales reps in California, and it was too expensive to fly me back to the East Coast a lot. So that was a short-lived career, but I really did love it. And I realized I need to train teachers. I love training teachers. So I started a nonprofit, and it took 1 year before it got approved. And so the last 2 years, I have been sharing with principals, superintendents, city councils about all the geniuses of old: Albert Einstein, Alexander Graham Bell, Henry Ford, Leonardo da Vinci. And I realized this year I am learning about dyslexic adults that are my peers in my network groups. Christina Bacour is a graduate from UC Davis who wants to be Miss California. Excuse me, she won the title of Miss Yosemite Valley. And we're going to follow her through to win Miss California and Miss America. And she is an advocate for dyslexia. She had accommodations through college, but she had her parents just by her side all the time through school. And she's a successful adult in a career. Other dyslexic adults that I've met, this guy right here, Matthew Head, he designs high performance cars. He's an engineer in England. And David Weber, he's a dyslexic man that's a designer of computer games. And then Lisa Fisher has a podcast, and she was Little Miss Talkative when she was in high school. She won the most talkative person award, which she cracks up about. And one of my newer dyslexic friends, his name is Rook. He does a lot of marketing and helps me network, helps me get the word out to you. So the problem is we weren't born with a reading brain like we were to see and hear. Reading is a man-made thing, and God gave us the brain parts to work together to read. So we were trained to work as apprentice with an apprentice model, hands-on and observing. With the Industrial Revolution brought a wonderful invention, the printing press, but immediately 20% of our population was locked out because the standard for excellence was now based on reading, and the dyslexic kids couldn't read. So 20% of them were wearing a shroud of shame. So currently, if kids aren't reading by 4th grade, they're at risk of dropping out of high school and going to prison. Kids have a low self-esteem if they have dyslexia. They're feeling stupid, and their homes are typically battlefields. So I use the acronym GENIUS to help teach about dyslexia. I think it's easy to follow. G is for gifts. So God has given all of us gifts, but the gifts of the dyslexic child are hidden because of low self-esteem. Let me tell you when they try to read. They'll usually try to memorize words in kinder or first grade, but when they're in second and third grade and they're trying to read, they're going to glance and guess at the words that they haven't learned, and they may know the beginning of the word, not the ending. So a peer or two will try to help them sound those words out, and they get further humiliated. Or the teacher will try to help them read and sound the words out for them, and they're humiliated. Kids will be frustrated that are their peers. Kids will laugh at them. So I've heard dyslexic children raise their hand to leave the room, not to read, but I suddenly have to go to the bathroom. And I've even heard of kids who have dyslexia-induced ulcers. I want to talk to you about auditory processing. When a teacher is reading a story or telling a story to the class, she'll often ask the first question related to the story, and the kids will shoot up their hands for the answer, but not the dyslexic kids. And even if they're not diagnosed, they're known as the struggling readers, okay? So someone will answer the question, and then the teacher will go to the next question, and suddenly all the kids raise their hands, and the teacher's so excited that this struggling learner understands now. Yay, I've accomplished something. She calls on the student, and the student answers the first question. So what's going to happen? The kids laugh, or they start murmuring, oh, blah, 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 blah. And the humiliation of that student is just piled on their shoulders. So the little girls will become shyer and shyer. The little boys will want to start acting out because they don't want to feel dumb. So they're going to do something crazy and wild that's going to make people laugh with them, not at them. Another example of auditory processing is when I was working at Bullock's, one of the gals in the management training program with me had auditory processing issues. I didn't know what they were then, but now I do. So when our manager would say, this inventory is due tomorrow, she'd send me to this end of the china and crystal, and she would send my coworker to the other side. Well, my coworker thought she said, do this tomorrow. And this happened a lot. So my projects were done, her projects were not. And she got in so much trouble. And I see this in middle school and high school and elementary school, where the kids just aren't understanding what the teachers want. So we need to let them see the big project, let them see the parts that are going to build to the goal. And we need to have explicit instructions of what's expected and when it's due. And we need agendas so that they can write down what is due and when they turn it in. So speaking of turning it in, I want to talk about executive functioning or organization skills. I remember in the middle school, I was working with this bright student who was getting A's and B's, and I was so happy for him in math. Suddenly his grade dropped to an F. All right, so what's going on? He's missing some assignment. And I would talk to the teacher, he's missing this, this, and this. He didn't turn them in. I would talk to the peers. The peers said, we did it. We did it with him. He did it. Where is it? We don't know. So sometimes we would find the work at the bottom of his backpack. So those are the executive functioning skills that need to be taught to the children, how to organize their work, how to turn in their homework. And then I've even had 2 parents tell me they found their child's homework in the kitchen cupboard. So imagine that. But what it just reminds me is we need to be empathetic to dyslexic children. We need to collaborate with the teachers, the special ed teachers, and talk to the peers. If we're someone in the classroom, find out why their score finally dropped. And then I want to tell you about Rook's story. Rook was the gentleman I showed you a picture of earlier. He was in the 3rd grade and he was put in the low reading group. And then a couple of weeks later, he was moved to the lower reading group. A couple of weeks later, the very lowest reading group. He was so humiliated. And then someone had the bright idea to give him a test, and it shot him to the top of the gifted students. So what it takes is someone to have a knowledge that dyslexic kids have gifts, and we need to unlock those gifts. So E stands for enthusiasm. What excites your child? What excites the students? Is it going outdoors? Is it being in the kitchen? Is it cooking? Is it hands-on? Is it creating things? Is it drawing? Is it dancing? The story of my daughter, Laura, she's not dyslexic, but in middle school, she would watch TV with her dad and we would watch Chicago Fire, and then we'd watch some emergency hospital movies. And I would always have to leave the room because it got pretty gory for me when they had the injuries and the surgeries and the blood. And I really thought we might be harming her brain and desensitizing her by letting her watch these movies. But my husband said, no, let her watch, and I just felt in my spirit, it was okay for her to watch these. She might go into the medical field. And she did. She went into nursing, and now she's in her third year at UCLA here in California, and she is in neurotrauma. She loves this neurotrauma. And then the story of my son, he's not dyslexic either, but I noticed his interest when he was a little boy. He loved trucks and he loved the sounds. And when we would go to Kaiser Hospital for a well baby check, we would take a snack afterwards and we'd watch Kaiser Hospital do all their outdoor, they were always renovating and building, and they had digger trucks and dirt diggers and crane operators and moving stuff. And it was so entertaining. Well, my son was always good at building Legos and using building blocks and creating things that had leverage. And we thought he needs to be an engineer. So we encouraged him to go to college. He went to Cal Poly Pomona for 5 years. He couldn't pass his Calculus 3 class, which to me, I thought was really sad that those professors didn't know how to teach Calculus 3. But you know what? God had a different plan for Richard. He is a crane operator and he loves it. And they recognize him with his engineering talents and how it works in the field. He loves to be outdoors. And then how many of you have ever been in a classroom with college kids? The girls wear so much makeup, it's almost theatrical or very dramatic. And I remember talking to some of these high school girls saying, you might have a career in the theater or the arts doing the makeup for the actresses and the actors, even television. So don't discount that talent. Dyslexic kids are not meant to fit in. They're meant to stand out. So I want to end the E with Jillian Lynn's story. She was a little wiggle bottom in 3rd grade. And her mom was concerned because she wasn't learning to read. Her mom took her to the doctors, and the doctor put Jillian in a large room. And he said, I'll be right back. I'm just going to talk to your mom. He turned on the music and left the room. Well, when they looked in the window, Jillian started dancing. And oh, could she dance? Oh, it makes me want to cry. But the doctor told the mother, there's nothing wrong with your daughter. She's a dancer. She needs to be moving. And that's what dyslexic people need. They need to move. They need to ask questions. They need to be creative. So Jillian's mom got her involved with dance. And at the age of 20, she was the lead dancer in Sleeping Beauty with the Royal Opera House. At the age of 50, Jillian was a choreographer, and she was approached by 2 lead directors to be the choreographer for Phantom of the Opera and the musical Cats. The rest is history. So Jillian passed away a couple years ago at the age of 93. And what a legacy she's left us, because her mother noticed her interest, cared enough to look into it and find out how to help her daughter. Like that story? So here's a picture of Jillian, and here is Cats and Phantom of the Opera. N stands for neuroscience. Dr. Roger Sperry was popular for his split brain theory in the 1960s. He won a Nobel Prize in the 1980s for his split brain theory. And I want to share, first of all, the definition of dyslexia according to the International Dyslexia Association, that it's neurobiological in origin, and it's characterized by difficulties with accurate and or fluent word recognition and poor spelling and decoding abilities. I like to say it more easily. Dyslexia is neurological in origin, so the brain can be retrained. That's huge. It's more of a learning difference than a disability. And it affects a student's reading, writing, spelling, and speaking. So how easy is that to spot? So back to Dr. Roger Sperry, he talked about the brain. Well, I want to talk about the brain parts. If you look at this picture, on the left, we have language. We also have math and science, but we have writing and numbers and analytical thought and logic. On the right, we have music down here. We have creativity, imagination, and we have 3D. Do you know dyslexic people have said that 3D is their superpower? So Dr. Roger Sperry split the central part of the brain called the corpus callosum. Well, I don't have a picture of that here, but he worked with the left and the right sides of the brain independently, and he saw the seizures stop and the brains could still develop and people could function. And he mentioned in the 1960s, if educators could take this knowledge in the classroom and use it, we could help these struggling readers. And before International Dyslexia Association was formed in the 1960s, it was word blindedness, and it was with the Orton Gillingham Society. So what I do with my reading program, it's a structured literacy program. I address the left and right angular gyrus. So imagine the right angular gyrus right here wants to send the wrong words over to the left side of the brain where the language center is. So kids with dyslexia are reading basically from the wrong side of their brain. So the right angular gyrus wants to send kelp instead of clap, farm instead of from, dad instead of father. I just saw that the other day. And what we do when we send music in the left ear, it's going to transfer, crosses to the right angular gyrus, gives it a job it likes to do so it doesn't take over the reading. And then we're also bypassing that central part of the brain called the corpus callosum, which has been called a lazy referee. So the music has an easing effect on the brain. So I stands for innovation. There are 4 areas where dyslexic people really thrive. They excel in engineering, architecture, entrepreneurship, and the arts. So you recognize these people. I want to share with you about the D and the B. People ask me, are D and the B reversals common to all dyslexics? And the answer is no. I believe research says 30 to 40% of dyslexic people have reversals, but Leonardo da Vinci down here, this guy, man, he was in music and architecture and art. He was just all over the place. So creative. He used to write in cursive backwards. And I just interviewed a woman on my podcast. Her name is Gail McClellan. And she also wrote cursive backwards. She remembers as a young girl. And she said she had to flip her paper into the mirror to read the proper direction so she could study for her tests. So that just baffles me, but it's amazing. I want to describe what writing for a dyslexic child looks like. They're going to omit letters and syllables. They're not going to remember long sentences. So you have to give them sentences in parts. They're going to forget to capitalize, and they're going to forget to punctuate unless you remind them of COPS, capitalize, punctuate, order of your words. Does it make sense? And then often you can't read their writing, and I've had to ask the kids to read their writing to me. Sometimes they can't even read their own writing. And then we are talking about dysgraphia, where there's actually a writing problem that they can't get the thoughts onto paper, but they can't write properly either. And that's when we want to get assistive technology for those kids so that they could get some help with the writing. So I want to repeat, 40% of self-made millionaires were dyslexic. Did you know Walt Disney was dyslexic? And Steve Jobs was dyslexic? And Steven Spielberg with all his creative movies. And this is Erin Brockovich. She was dyslexic, is dyslexic. And then 35% of the United States entrepreneurs are dyslexic. So then I want to tell you about Daniela's story, because she did not follow the path of her mother who was in prison. Daniela, I told you her story earlier. She basically learned 3 years, she made 3 years growth in reading vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension. Now, her home used to be a battlefield. And I know in the middle and high school, kids not only have hormones happening, but parents often throw up their hands and they say, let the school deal with my child, let the teacher deal with my child. If those relationships and self-esteem and support aren't nurtured in the early elementary years, it's really difficult to develop that in the middle school. So Daniela was just one of our miracles that she was able to read so beautifully, not following in the path of going to prison. Did you know 80% of people in prison in the juvenile court system are illiterate? And then 66% of people in prison are illiterate. Also, all these numbers are just baffling. 35% of high school dropouts are dyslexic. I had a friend who taught at the university that told me, he taught criminal justice, and he said he knows a state back east that looked at the 3rd grade illiteracy rate to determine how many prisons to build. And that just is so sad. So U stands for unique. We have a very unique approach to teaching reading, and it's called the Orton-Gillingham model, OG for short. And I want to ask you how you learn best. Do you learn best when you see something visually, in patterns, in 3D? Raise your hand. Do you learn better when you hear something, maybe a book on tape, or you ask people to repeat it a different way? Or do you learn better with hands-on? Do you need to touch it and actually operate to learn it? Maybe you learn better when you're speaking. How many times do we solve our own problem just by sharing it with someone? So those are the different modalities we learn, we use when we teach reading. And while all kids learn with all of them, dyslexic kids really need this, because we need to use all their senses. We're working to their strength as well as to their weakness. So we want to teach kids with our reading program that will build their confidence to read, build their confidence to write nice stories, bring them to the head of their class in reading where they don't feel stupid anymore. This little guy, Ezra, is our poster child. He didn't know his letter names and sounds 2 years ago. In 1 year, we taught him not only how to read, but he was reading at a 4th grade level, comprehending at a 5th grade level. He exited special ed for reading. Now he's going into 4th grade this coming fall. He's reading at a 5th grade level and comprehending at a 6th grade level. We kept him in our program, and his parents are home, his mom's a homeschool mom, but they continued to get him the intervention he needed. So I have a student in my practicum who came to me at a low 3rd grade reading level, and now he's reading at a 6th grade level. And so this is just the kind of results we get. So the S stands for success. What is success to you? I want to focus success in reading, not success in life, because we all would define that differently. But success in reading, do you remember taking your kids to the library and they would bring back a bunch of books and read them over and over again and share them with you, and you take them back and get another dozen books in 3 weeks? Well, that is not the reality of a child in a dyslexic home. Dyslexic kids do not like to go to the library. They don't want to go to grandma's house to read unless grandma makes it really fun for them. So our nation sees a C as proficient. So let me ask you, how many of you ever received a C in a class that you were just so glad to get over with it, you never want to see that teacher again or have that curriculum again? I've been there. How many of you ever had a C- in a class that had another progression to it and you struggled because everybody else had A's and B's and you lagged, you felt like you were never catching up? So this shows us that C is not where we want our dyslexic children. We want them earning A's and B's, and they can do it. So we need to get our dyslexic children graduating from high school. 2/3 of the kids who are not at grade level reading by 4th grade will drop out of high school. And when that happens, they'll go into prison or be on welfare. And this impacts all of our communities. We want our high school kids graduating. We want them to be critical thinkers. We want them to have exposure to the different contents and ideas of things that, get some ideas of what they can do for careers. And I want to add, it's okay if a woman wants to be a homemaker. Not every woman has to get a job and be out there, but wants to raise kids, that's fine too. So while college was great for me, it's not for everybody. There's trade school, there's technical school. But if dyslexic kids want to be doctors, engineers, teachers, scientists, they're going to need degrees. But we can give them accommodations. And what that looks like is more time on a test. They can do their tests orally. They can answer questions once or twice instead of 3 and 4 or 5 times of the same kind of a question, right? So kids can get accommodations to help them succeed, but they have to get diagnosed. And I am someone who does that, so you can reach out to me. I want to share the story of Christina Bacour. So I shared earlier, she is on our board and she's running for Miss California this June. And when she wins Miss California, she's going to run for Miss America. And she is our voice for the dyslexic person. She was very supported by her parents when she was young. She said they created a safe place for her and they knew she loved animals. So they always had her engaging with animals. And she went to UC Davis and graduated with her Bachelor of Science in Animal Studies. And now she works in the emergency animal care at UC Davis. And she's applied to veterinary school. So that's a wonderful story. Please vote for her if you're in California to be Miss California. So are you ready for some dyslexia simulations? Let me show you what dyslexia feels like. So take a look at this sentence below. See if you could figure out what the student is trying to say. You can unmute yourself if you want to speak out. Linda, Marcel, you want to speak? Kathy? What is this person trying to say?
I'll give it a shot at it. Trying to say the stale marshmallow is in the yellow bowl, but
That's right.
There's a lot of mishmash in that.
You are right. And when we see the writing consistently, we know what the kids are trying to say, right? But they need to know how to spell the words correctly. And then we need to ask them what's missing. And we remove the second vowel in those words. How about this one? Can you read this? Marcel?
The snowstorm is hard on the old fellow.
Oh, I love that accent. You're correct. And again, we don't want to just give the answers. We want to ask them something's missing. Every syllable needs a vowel. And then here's one more. Kathy, your turn. This one's a little bit harder. I'm going to move forward. I had a great time shopping. So what happened was even A was spelled with a U. Maybe they didn't close the top of their A and it looked like a U. Okay. So true or false? Put in the chat, fourth graders in Los Angeles are reading better than the national average. That is so false. And again, if kids fail to reach grade level reading by fourth grade, they rarely catch up. California is one of the lowest scores in the States, and then Los Angeles is one of the lowest in California. So here's another dyslexia simulation. See if you can figure out what this sentence is saying. Anybody? You want to put it in the chat? So this one is saying, there comes a time when your turtle creeps away. We changed every T to a D. So you're going to recognize patterns in what your dyslexic child is writing. How about this one? Anybody want to take a stab at it?
I'm going to try. Where did the kitty come from?
Okay, so what we did here was we replaced every E
That's
with
correct.
I. This sentence is, where did the cute kite come from? Thank you for trying. So take a look at this writing. This is what dyslexia looks like in the classroom. See if you could figure out what sentence this is. Anybody want to try? This one is the clam sat on the bottom of the ocean. You notice how they're all spelling the same word differently. Look at this one. This is what it looks like in the classroom. Teachers should recognize it. It's not rocket science. These are intelligent kids. 1 in 5 kids has dyslexia. They have average to high intelligence. They should not be writing like this. These are the red flags teachers need to recognize. We gathered in a circle around the campfire and told ghost stories. One more group of sentences. Look at the way the 40-year-old wrote. This one, looks like this 6th grader seemed to write it the best, I guess, but still, they rushed into the cottage in the nick of time. So this is an example of what writing looks like in the workplace for a dyslexic person. A lot of cross-outs, not knowing grammar rules, when to double the letter, missing the vowel team, G-U-E-S-T. Here I helped her spell it, and not knowing how to spell dollar. So I am a lifelong learner. It's keeping my brain young, right? So I took a 2-week full training, an intensive training in Norton Gillingham in the summer. And now I'm in my practicum, which I hope to end by the end of 2021. Here are some happy, successful kids. This is what Emma's writing looked like in the beginning. This is what it looks like now after about 50 sessions. No, I'm sorry, Emma had 100 sessions. She spent 100 hours with me. She spelled drink. Look at this. We're so proud of her. Look at early. She forgot her Y, but compare it to URL. Look at how much she's learning. And then these are other happy students. This is what success looks like. And we're doing this online. In my doctorate research, kids came to me in the 10 to 20 percentile range. After 12 weeks, without the music, they achieved the 40 percentile range in vocabulary development. With the music, they achieved the 60 percentile range. This is what it looks like in a bell curve. You could follow with me. They all started down here. They were in return to intervention. After 12 weeks, without the music, they were here in the low average. With the music, woohoo, high average. This is why I need to let you know about music and how it impacts reading. And then here's some data that I did in 2007, the year I went into my doctorate program. These are the percentage increases in comprehension. 5 students made increases. 1 second grader made 90% increase, 47% increase, 37% increase, 12% increase, 50% increase in comprehension. I see this all the time. Here's a little story of Emma. So she, as a 7-year-old, look at this. She now is reading at a let me see. This is grade level. So she was reading at a 1st grade level when she came to us. Now she is reading fluently. Her fluency or her speed, her rate is at a 3rd grade level. And then her fluency, she started at a 2nd grade level and now she's at a 2nd grade 7-month level. So that's 7 months great growth. So for a 7-year-old, her age equivalent starting was 8. So she was very bright, but now she's at 8.9, 8 years, 9 months. So I believe dyslexic children can learn to read in 6 weeks. That's why I developed a music app with my husband. It's called CDSM, Syntron Dyslexia Solutions with Music. And you have a free download. And you can try, you can have up to the first 10 exercises are free. So what I want to share is my 9-step reading program. We do phonogram cards. We do sound circles. We use plastic letters. We do reading for 10 minutes when we use the music in the left ear. We have phonological activities that we do with a whiteboard. We do that twice. We have the kids work in a workbook for 10 minutes with music playing in the left ear. And then finally, we do a spelling test at the end of the hour that is 10 minutes of music in the left ear and the spelling exercises in the right ear. This is what the cards look like. We have 101 colorful cards. They each have a picture associated with them. Then we have the sound circles with Unifex cubes. And we have the colorful letters. And these are all, well, you can purchase these on my website if you want phonological cards. And my reading program, we have a new design to our books. It's D and the B, and it's reversed over music. So we have this, we have instructions, we have the spelling exercises, and we have the phonics reading. Here we have a parental toolbox, which are like the Blackline Masters, and we have workbooks. We have a phonics workbook for the 1st through 4th grade, and we have phonics and grammar for the 5th grade and older. And then we have grammar tricks. and it teaches all the extra grammar tricks. Why are the C and the G with hard and soft sounds? When do we double a letter when we add ing and ed? What are the syllable types? All these grammar tricks are in one bundle for you. So the spelling exercises are 28, and there's 8 sentence groups. Sometimes I'm changing my students to work with me from Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So there's a little bit longer time without me. And I have the parents work with them on the spelling sentences. So those are on the app, and they're just so fun in your phone. So what I'm reaching out to you is inviting 10 students, 10 brilliant students to come work with me in my program. I can do this for you. Give your child 30 sessions. So that's 2 to 5 days a week, includes a dyslexia assessment for $3,500. Or if you'd rather have a trial of 10 tutoring sessions, 2 to 5 days a week, I want to offer that to you as well. You're guaranteed results by the 10th session, which is why I can offer that as a trial. But kids are making 1 to 3 year gains in only 30 sessions. And then I have a free download for you. I'm going to put this link in the chat, but it's also on my website. There's a free download. My website is dyslexia-solutions.com. And you could print this out just to give you reminders to how do you help your child move that energy from stress to excitement. Play the music, positive affirmations, praise and give stickers. Recognize your child's difference, your interests, and then tell your child about these dyslexic adults who are so successful. They were geniuses. And remember, tell your child dyslexia is not a disability, it's a learning difference. And then finally, just yesterday, I published my second book. It's called Dyslexia, A Trait of Genius. And you can buy that on Amazon as an ebook. And you can also order it. And I also designed a t-shirt. How many of you want 10 t-shirts to pass out to your students? So that's available on my website also. And I'm going to stop my share. And I said I would share the link with you, but if you go to my website, dyslexia-solutions.com, you can download that little cheat sheet to help you bring success to your child.